Staying attuned, a poetic gaze, backwards and forward, with folks both brilliant and humble.
With force and with grace, leading us someplace sun-drenched and a place fun-filled. Our guest today is Angela Salamanca. She is a mother, restaurateur, and community organizer. Like all our guests, she has many other things too, and we will dive into that now. So this poem is called For Two Without You. I am alone readying lunch for me, but I grab for the plates and retrieve one more than I need and stare at a pile of one less than three, thinking of you and me and how someday I may have to live without you and how sad a pile of two will feel knowing that you are never coming home for lunch.
Thanks for sharing. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is the title. I heard it in Spanish. Can you repeat the title?
Yeah. I think it's for two without you.
Yeah, for two. Like, para ti.
Para ti. Yeah.
Without you.
Right.
That's the first thing I heard. I also hear some longing. Of not wanting to lose somebody, or what would life look like when that person is not around. And it makes me think of, we're at an age where we have already lost somebody. So it's a feeling that it's pretty real. And how life goes on, you figure it out.
Yeah. I think, I was digging through the poems, and this one was probably back in the summertime.
Last summer?
Yeah, this past summer, and I legitimately grabbed 2 plates accidentally. I just picked up, I thought there was 1 plate left and there was 2, so I picked them up and I put them down, and I just thought, well, I only need 1 because I'm making lunch for me.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest part for me is I've lost a few people, not as much as many have. At this age, I'm 39, but I think the hardest part for me now, being in a serious partnership, a marriage, has been, now together for 6 years and married for over 3, has been just this sort of like impending reality that either I'm going first or she's going first.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart either way.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation about loneliness this morning with a good friend of mine who's not in a partnership, who longs for a partnership. And I think the 12 years that we've known each other, we both have been in different relationships that we thought were going to turn to be long-term partnerships, and they haven't. So we are alone, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that he was sharing with me was, well, you're not really alone. You have your kids. And I'm like, but they're going to move on.
Yeah.
And even in this dynamic that I was telling you about with my kid it's still at home in college, but it's still at home, there's a lot of alone time for me. Because she's either there studying, there with the boyfriend, or not there at work or at school or at soccer.
Right.
So I'm spending a ton of time by myself. And what I was trying to tell him this morning was, but aren't we all alone anyways. Even in a partnership, even with kids, even with family, I feel like we are alone, you know? We die alone, and we spend a lot of time alone. So I don't know, I think my feelings have shifted a little bit around this longing for partnership, but I really appreciate and love the ones that have one and can really, you know, like, be in it.
Yeah.
Like, really acknowledge it.
Yeah, I think that idea, I want to talk a little bit more about that idea that we're all alone, whether we're in a partnership or not. Is that, do you believe that, or is that a rationalization that like helps one get by who's lonely?
Probably the latter.
I don't know. I mean, we're both in different situations, right?
Well, I was married for 10 years, 12 years ago. And I think that, you know, there are seasons in a relationship, not just in a partnership.
Yeah.
There are seasons where you're really like glued to the hip, right? And everything that you do with that person. But there is a moment after you spend enough time with a person where you need your space. And I think that in the 10 years that I was married, I was really young.
Yeah.
I became a mother. And then work. And then we opened the restaurant.
Yeah.
So I could say that in the day-to-day, at the beginning of our relationship, we were really together doing a lot of things. Once I became a mother, that really shifted, you know?
Yeah.
And once I opened the restaurant, that totally, I really felt alone.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of this. And you know, like, I don't want to dismiss his role. He was a great father. He was really supportive. But we just were not spending enough time together for that connection to really be strong.
Right.
So I feel like I've been feeling alone in that way for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So now it's become my MO, you know?
Right. Well, it almost seems like not a rationalization, you know, and I didn't mean to say it was just a question. But it seems more of just your reality. If you're like, because I'm presuming that my relationship exists this way into perpetuity, or, well, until one of us leaves. And for one of us to leave would mean that we would have chosen to stay together that whole time.
Yes.
And work through a bunch of stuff and found a way to make it work. I don't believe either of us is going to persist in a relationship that's not working.
Yes.
So my presumption is, if that happens, then I am, like, if that's my goal, then my fear is very tied to a legitimate part of that goal, which is to be with that person, my wife, until one of us dies. You know, if I really thought the relationship, or if I was in another situation where I had a relationship that ended before someone died, it didn't just one day like get bad and like it's over. It probably was bad, disintegrating for a little while. So that kind of makes sense why one would have just a different reality and experience, and yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the nature of your current relationship is a reflection of who you are right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think we are so much wiser as we get older.
Yeah.
And when I got married, I was fairly young. I had no communication skills, and I was carrying a ton of trust issues.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just a very different relationship that I would never be able to have a relationship like that again.
Sure.
And I think that there was a time in there that I stayed just because I didn't know any better, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe part of the reason why I'm not in a relationship right now is because I know better.
Yeah.
So I don't settle for anything.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you're acknowledging loneliness. It's not like, oh no, I'm better, alone. Like you're saying you're lonely.
Yeah.
But the alternative is not necessarily better.
Well, I mean, I think
Like you said, settling. Like, I'm not going to settle.
Well, I have really full relationships in my life, you know?
Yeah.
So I think saying I'm lonely doesn't necessarily need to be laced with sadness. You know,
Sure.
there are day-to-day things that I wish I could share with somebody.
Yeah.
That
you'd also say it's those little moments like that a good friend just can't fill for you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's those small things.
small things
that you miss.
that are hard to recreate when you are not in small quarters, right?
Yeah.
But even with that, I do feel that a lot of the relationships that I have really fill me up. I would say 90% for what I need. And there are moments here and there where I miss that 10% of, you know, like partnership that you get to build over a lifetime.
Yeah.
That you don't get to recreate in any way. Like, it's just, you can't really do it.
So what do you, like, how do you fulfill the sort of like, I mean, is it kind of like I'm done, or I'm just really picky now? Like, do you go on dates?
I try.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've learned is that I might not be super approachable in public. And I think it's like an energetic thing for me. And this is a conversation I have with my therapist on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Because she's like, well, why is it that when you go out of town, it's like a completely different person when it comes to that?
Yeah.
And that when you're in town, and I'm like, I don't know. You know, I feel like there is this persona that I need to like, it's not respect, but like procure. I don't know. It's like a thing that I need to
uphold.
Yeah. And it feels a little irrational. But I am so much more, and I don't know if conservative is a word, but like quiet when it comes to putting myself out there as a single woman in this city. Because it's a small city.
Small city.
You know?
Yeah.
And this is part of the conversation I was having with my friend this morning. You know, the letting go of control is something really scary.
Yeah.
I am a person that is a boss, that is in charge, that is always driving and making the decisions. So to be vulnerable in that way, rejection feels like the end of the world. Which I know it's not, but that's how it feels.
Well, I have two things. I want to start here and go backward. The first one is just, do you suppose as a woman who has so much power and so much force in this community that men are intimidated? Is that part of it?
Maybe some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's just something you can't control, right?
Yes. So then.
But it does filter out those weak men, right?
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does. I certainly hope it does. But it still leaves me with almost no choices.
Yeah. But how does it feel? So the second question is back. How does it feel when you go, I think I remember you go into Charlotte or you go to Bogota, New York City. Where does it feel like a release? I mean, any place but here, another big city?
Yeah, I think it's more of like, I feel like I have nothing to lose. So I think that maybe I present like bolder and braver and more direct. Because I'm like, nobody knows me here, like what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I feel lighter and freer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
How does it feel to date? Well, I guess you've been here for a while. But
30 years. That is a long time.
That is a long time, yeah.
Yes.
I guess it's hard to have any sort of comparable sort of situation back in Colombia.
No.
No. Yeah.
I don't know if I told you, we had our 30-year high school reunion God, 2 years ago in Bogota. And I hadn't seen any of my high school friends for 30 years.
Yeah.
So, you carry all these narratives of the people that were your friends. And I really, I have a memory thing. I don't remember a lot of things, especially from when I was in Colombia.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was the being an immigrant and having to really shift and get things done.
Well, allocate a much bigger portion of your brain towards a whole new language.
Like,
and
how do
life
we make
and
it,
culture.
right? Like, how do I make it?
Yeah.
And not having a lot of like those reminders or sharing space with those people. Like I was gone. Like I graduated and I left. Graduated December 7, 1993. Moved to the States January of 1994. So anyways, have the reunion. And then I got there, and some people I remembered, some people I didn't recognize. But there was a person I really wanted to see.
Yeah.
And it was such a moment, It was such a moment. He's married, he has children, like he has a life. And I have a life. But it was so wonderful to like be seen, recognized, remembered, like from that person that I completely forgotten that I was, like in such a tender way. It was really great. But no, I mean, like, I don't keep connections with anybody back home. And, there's a few of us that now talk on a regular basis through WhatsApp. But everybody has a life. Everybody has kids. Everybody's married. Everybody has, commitments. So I don't know that there's any room for me to have any kind of, like, intimate connection with anybody.
What was it about that guy? Like, you went there wanting to see him?
Yeah.
But what was your relationship like in high school?
We were good friends. He is a musician, was a musician, still a musician. And he was just like this beautiful, creative person.
Yeah.
And we were friends. And we had a friend. There were three of us.
Yeah.
And my other friend had a crush on him. So I never crossed the line because I didn't think that, it was just not even a thing.
Yeah.
So I always kind of honor how she felt about him. And I didn't know that he liked me until I told everybody that I was leaving for the States. And I think that opened up the door for him to say, like, this is how I feel. He was the only person that wrote me a letter when I moved.
Like, that you received in the States?
Yeah, because back then, that's the only way that you communicated.
Yeah.
So, we had a kiss and we had a moment before I left, but that was it.
Like, before you left in
Colombia, like 30 years ago.
Okay.
No, not this time. This time it was just like holding hands, talking. Like, do you remember this? I remember this, and kind of like catching up with life. And he was really generous with what he shared about how he remembered me.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful,
That's so special.
Yeah. So I brought that back, and I was like, I'm good. I'm good. And I have a lot of moments like that with a lot of people where I feel really seen. And that's really what I need as a woman. Sometimes I need other little things, but for the most part, I really need to be seen and acknowledged.
Yeah.
So if I get to have that with my friends, with the people that I work with, people within the community, I feel pretty together. I'm pretty solid.
What was it like? I mean, you said within a few weeks after graduating, you were in the States.
About a month and a half. It was December, and then end of January is when I moved.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, who did you move in with?
So what happened is I applied for La Universidad Nacional. It's my only choice to go to college. And I didn't pass. It's also because of a boy.
Okay.
And mom and dad decided that I needed to do something.
So wait, that was a college in
Colombia.
In Colombia, yeah.
So the plan was never for me to come to the States.
Okay.
But because I didn't get into the university, which is a public university, they said, hey, your uncle in Raleigh says you can go and stay with him for 6 months. You can practice your English, maybe work a little bit, and then you can come back and reapply for school.
Yeah.
And like I was 17 years old at the time. So it's not like I had a little agency about where I was going or what I was doing. So I said, okay, I'll go for a little while. And then I never went home. I stayed. It was great. So I came to live here with my uncle. What actually happened is that when we arrived in Miami, I arrived at 12 o'clock, and my uncle, who I did not know very well, and his wife and his kid were there waiting for me. So I was just kind of like meeting them sort of like for the first time.
Yeah.
But like we're pretty familiar, like we...
Like fresh out of immigration or customs.
Yeah, they're right there.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we have to wait a little bit longer because at 2 o'clock, these other two people are coming. And I'm like, oh, okay, who's coming? This cousin and this niece. And then we're all going to Disney, and then we're driving back to Raleigh. And I'm like, okay. And it's unfolding as they say, right?
Were they a cousin, like a niece that you knew?
No, I had no idea who these people were.
Yeah, okay.
So we meet them. It's a boy and a girl, and then my uncle and his wife and their daughter. We go to Disney. We come to Raleigh, and when we get to Raleigh, they're like, well, you're not actually going to live with Carlos because we're actually separated. So you're going to live with his wife, the kid, and these other two kids that came. And
so wait, Carlos is just living by himself?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were like, it makes more sense for you to live with the woman and the daughter and the other than with your uncle by yourself. And like, I think he was depressed, like not a great situation.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's I think that's how it's gonna be. It's not like I could call mom or like write mom, like what's going on. It's like, this is the situation. And that was the situation for a year. It was great though. It was great.
I mean, your English is so good. How long did it take to get?
I think it took me 2 years.
2 years.
I knew English, and I knew more than everybody that came that day from Colombia.
Yeah.
But I knew enough that I could hear people make mistakes, and I was like, I'm not gonna be that person. So I would let them say all the things and then correct whenever I could. But I would never be the one who said anything. Because I didn't want to be wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we went to Wait Tech, and we took ESL classes there. And I remember I met this Turkish guy, and he always tried to make me speak. And I'm like, I wouldn't say a thing. And then I think after 3 months, he's like, you gotta talk. I know that you understand what I'm saying. You gotta practice. You gotta learn this language. If you're gonna be here, I didn't know at the time I was gonna stay.
Sure. But coming back, it was a fear of making mistakes.
Yeah, like.
So you were practicing in your head, but never fully socializing.
Mm-mm. And I'm a super social human being,
right.
But yeah, that was 1994.
So coming back to loneliness, how lonely was that time?
I think the first time I really felt lonely was, so I had a choice. I had a ticket for 6 months. At the 6-month mark, we had to make a decision of whether extending our visa for another 6 months or go back. I started working right away, and I was making money, and I was helping mom and my sister. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I had to stay. So we extended our visa, and then at the year mark, we had to make a decision. If we were going to go back home or overstay our visa. So I didn't really feel lonely until the fall of that year. I don't know if it's because the weather changed. I had never experienced seasons. So I remember really loving fall.
Yeah.
But realizing that the holidays were coming and I was not going to be with my family. And this is the first time ever, for me to not be at grandma's, grandpa's, all the cousins. It's always such a full house. So I think that I felt lonely that time. But everything else about that year was so different. Like me living with all these people that I didn't know, how relaxed our rules about living and anything that we did were. My mom was such a strict human with a horrible temper and terrible communication. So like to come here and then live with this woman who was 30 years old, she's really young, taking care of 3 teenagers and a 5-year-old, with all kinds of emotional things going on as well, was really liberating.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have anybody telling me all the time what I needed to do, how I needed to be, like she was just like, make sure you go to school, make sure you go to work. Basically, that was basically what, and she gave us a car. So I really enjoyed, and we lived in a beautiful like apartment complex that was so much prettier from where I was coming from. So it felt like it was so new in all the ways that I don't think that I felt lonely until like, oh, okay, am I staying? And like, what does that mean about my sister? Not so much my mom, but like my sister. And the holidays are big celebrations for me. You've been to my house for the holidays.
Yeah.
So I think that was a time where I felt a little lonely.
Did you find, because like it's the novena, right? That is such a fun time, and there's so many. I guess my question is just like, how quickly did you find your people, that such that you could have gatherings like that and kind of fill in for what you were missing?
I think I've always been a gatherer of strays. So once I made the decision to stay here, anybody that was an immigrant or, was learning English or had just come to Raleigh, I would be like, you gotta become part of our group.
Yeah.
And for years, that group really fluctuated because people were here in the same manner that I was. They were here for 6 months or 3 months or a year, but people were coming and leaving. And I remember, like, I think year 3, I was like, I have said goodbye to so many people at the airport, because I would always go and say my goodbyes to people from all over the country. When we were in Wade Tech at that time, we met people from all over the place. So I think that I've always tried to create community anywhere that I've been. So I think at first it was definitely with all my international ESL peers.
Yeah.
Because it felt like we were all in the same boat.
What's interesting is that now I find, the other thing is that you're this organizer of community in Raleigh who, like, all strays are welcome, right? Like,
yeah.
Like you're talking first about the immigrant population and those that, ESL folk. But like, I don't know, when I go to your parties, I feel like a stray that's welcome.
Yeah, because I'm a stray too. I've been a stray. I think that there's something about being the other, like I think I carry my immigrant, being an immigrant as a badge of honor. Like I kind of belong, but I know that I don't, and it's okay. So like if you feel that way, come join us.
Yeah.
You're welcome here. It's safe.
For sure.
So I think that that's taking place in many different ways throughout my life. I hadn't thought about it that way though.
So how do you go from, like, what's the trajectory when we're sitting in your bar restaurant here? What's the trajectory that takes you from moving and being picked up in Miami, going to Disneyland, learning English, to now having a variety of different culinary endeavors and a variety of different community engagements that you organize?
I think that I realized, and this has all been organic, obviously. I think the theme for me has been, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, but it needs to work. So moving here, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I mean, like, if you had told Angela, 17-year-old Angela, that she was going to live for 30 years in Raleigh, I don't know that I would have believed it. But so, how do we make this work? Learning English, working, kind of getting myself organized. Then deciding to go to school because that was one of the reasons that kept me thinking I needed to go back to Colombia. Like, I'm not going to get my education here. Like I said, there was a time in my life where I didn't have a immigration status. So studying was not a thing that I could do. So I was like, do I need to go back home so I can finish my education there, like my university there? My friends from Colombia would be like, you need to come back and finish. What are you going to be doing in the United States? You're going to be a waitress for the rest of your life? And like, that's a no-no from where I come from. It's kind of like looked down on. But then I figured it out too. Like, I need to study. Let me take some classes at Wade Tech that are not ESL. Finish my associates. It took a while. And then, like, okay, kind of transferred to a 4-year university.
Yeah.
And then, like, how do I do that? And then do that. And then graduated, and now I have this degree, and what do I do?
How are you paying for all this?
With work.
Like,
I would work.
You were just working full time.
Full time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that at the time, you don't know what you don't know. I didn't have a choice. Nobody was sending me money, and I got to figure out how to pay for rent and how to pay for my education. And I didn't have a lot of extra expenses besides the money that I would send mom and my sister. But I always made it work. But I knew it was fragile. I knew I was kind of patching things. With not a lot of glue. At least it felt that way. I'm like, well, I know how to hustle, I know how to do it, but it didn't feel really solid.
So, sorry, I think you get into a 4-year college after the associate's degree. Is that UNC?
UNC Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
And then I started dating Santi, my ex-husband at the time. And Santi had a very different life, came from a very different family background, all that stuff. And we really had a great relationship. We were both young and enthusiastic and full of energy and really wanted to have a family together. And his family was super, super supportive of everything that we wanted to do. So I think that I felt really supported by them. And that's why we opened the restaurant. Because I really wanted to have some like solid ground underneath our family. And I didn't think that I had that. Once I became a mom, I'm like, how are we going to feed these kids? Like, you want to be a farmer, I'm an artist. Like, it's not going to work. We got to figure something out. And they were like, what do you guys want to do? And they were really supportive. And you know, like I kind of took the lead.
This is his parents.
His parents, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they really supported what I wanted to do. I decided a restaurant because that's what I had been doing for a long time. My uncle was also super supportive. So it felt like the path of least resistance, but I had no idea what I was saying yes to.
Sounds like you about just had fucking clue.
That's exactly right.
You don't have to censor yourself.
I had no fucking idea. You know, it's like the same theme of like, I had no idea what my life in the States was going to look like. And I was just like, okay, let's just do this.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, yeah, let's open a restaurant. You know, like I know it's going to be hard work. I kind of know the work. I feel like we need to build something for the kids. But I had no idea. I still feel like I have no idea. Now I have a little bit more muscle, you know, like endurance. But that's been like one of the hardest things I've ever done. Which is probably one of the reasons why I'm not married anymore. It's hard. You only have a certain amount of energy. And then your life looks like where you put your energy. And I think that at the time, I felt like I needed to put any energy I had left after being a mom to make this place work. So.
And that's the nature of restaurants, right?
I think that's the nature of any business, like any small business. Because you're really like building as you go.
Yeah.
And learning as you do.
So do you ever wish that you were not a small business owner? I mean, there's a lot of sacrifice there that you've just named.
I think that there are things that I probably would have done differently. And I think that some of the sacrifices that we paid collectively were really big. But 13 years, we've been not together for 13 years. So I can see how different we were. We didn't really have a super healthy relationship. Could we stayed together? Maybe. But, like when I look at him today, I'm like, I don't know who this person is anymore. Like, I don't really recognize the man that I fell in love with and the person that he is today.
Do you think he recognizes you?
No. I don't think that he does.
Yeah.
So, I think everything kind of fell where it needed to fall, but it was hard. It was hard lessons there. But no, I love being my own boss. I don't know that I would change that for anything else. And I think it's helped me be a better mother,
Yeah. What do you think the most important characteristics are for succeeding as you have, not just in the restaurant industry, but hospitality industry, but in small businesses, as you say?
I think building culture, like a good, strong culture of trust and care for each other. Because, you're not really doing this on your own. And I think that I had to really expand myself when it comes to trusting people, which is something that I've always had a hard time with. But when you're in this together, and this applies to relationships too, right? Mm-hmm. Like those intimate, like partnership relationships, to really be able to trust somebody. So I think like building a culture of trust and safety, it's important. It's been important for me. Being able to like identify a good partnership and not a great partnership. Lots of honesty and transparency.
So coming back to that last one, I mean, it seems like saying no, knowing when to say no is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're making decisions, like many decisions all the time.
All the time, yes. And I think that for a long time, and I think the immigrant in me is always wanting to say yes. Because I want to feel valued. I want to be able to fit in. But, you know, going back to the energy thing, you can only say yes to so many things, and then you can't. You don't have anything else in you to give. So I think that was a hard lesson to learn. So now I pay a little bit more attention to what am I spending my time with, who am I spending my time with, like what are we doing, how can I be smart and efficient and still feel whole, and still show up for my team in a really awesome way where it's a benefit to them versus, you know, however many ways bosses can be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So like taking care of myself, important, super important. So I can show up in a really good way for them. And like that, you know, it's also the same for everything else in my life. My kids, my family, my friends, my community.
Yeah, with your, I mean, coming back to the situation, Sada and Anna being out, or, you know, there's a big transition for you. How do you envision, like, what do you want to do more of? Is it build a bigger hospitality thing, or is it more something else that you want to spend your time doing?
I think that I have learned that what works for me is to diversify where I am involved in work. So I'm doing some of that. So continue to find different ways that I can contribute to the industry as a whole, where I get smaller like to not tie myself so fully to one concept or one place or one particular partnership, but to have my hands in a lot of different things. That feels a lot more, I don't know, doable. I think that the reach is farther for me.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing. So like entertaining different opportunities with different people. And doing different businesses that look very different from what I've done before. And I think that I really have been trying to do more art. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and everybody's like, you just need to start. Just like write a thing or draw a thing. Just like do one artistic thing a day. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that I am so mortified of not getting it right that I'm like, and you know, like I've allowed myself moments, you know, with my neighbors, like art night. I'm like, okay, this is it, and I go and I play, and it feels good. But it's like an isolated thing. So I really need to. I feel like my body's been really asking for like do more creative stuff, like do things. So I'm hoping that I can make some space for that too.
I'm trying to draw more, and there's an open draw where they have a nude model in Aliyah El-Bermani's studio over at Anchorlight every Tuesday. And so you pay $20 that goes to the model, and you can tip them. And then you get 3 hours of their time for you to draw. And it's not a class, it's just an open, you know, and no one, I mean, I've been told this by Aliyah and others, just how open and welcoming it is, and it sounds like something that you and I should go to.
Well, and like and you have been one of those people that is kind of come into my life and without maybe knowing, because I don't know if you and I have had this conversation, but write poetry. Let me hear it. Share it with me.
Yeah.
Or the fact that you share yours with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's I know the universe is tapping at me.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation with many other creators in town, and they're like, just come over. We'll do something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, and I don't know if this is because of age or is that same vulnerability of I don't want to get it wrong. It sort of feels the same.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't want to be that old lady that is stuck in her ways, that is not willing to try, because I know that is just not who I am.
Yeah.
But it's felt like a big obstacle.
I caught this interesting talk, just a portion of it on some reel on Instagram. I believe it was Brene Brown talking about kind of underrealized creativity in everyone metastasizes into this sort of this cancerous tumor of just unhappiness as they age, when they look back and realize that because it's just human. We all are meant to create, and that doesn't mean paint, that doesn't mean poetry. It means those things too, but it's problem solving, it's being creative, it's playing, it's being playful. And that to me is what I ambition to do more of in my life, is find a way to balance everything, whatever hands are in whatever pots, or what you would say, such that I have plenty of room to be creative. And for me, it is ultimately just figuring out how to not fear falling, face first, flat, because that's going to happen.
It's part of the process. Yeah,
it's part of it. But I think once you realize that what the reward is, or what the loss is if you don't do it. We talked about this extensively with Victor on episode 1, which if anyone's listening and has not heard episode 1, go back to that one and start there. But yeah, I think for everyone, they need to figure out how to create, and that could be in the kitchen, that could be on the soccer field, that could be anywhere. But it ultimately is a sort of, I think, a joyous freedom from being playful that you never grow out of. You're never supposed to grow out of.
You're not. Yeah. And I'm really familiar with this play, thing from Brene. And I have tried different things to kind of loosen up these tightness that I've had over the last decade of having to make it work. So I gotta get really organized and really tight, and it just feels like that. It feels really, really like a tight ball of rubber bands.
Yeah.
So I'm how do I loosen up? And I've over the years have done lots of things. I run, I do yoga. Last year, I committed to going dancing. And this is a really uncomfortable thing for a Latin American woman, going dancing alone to a salsa social, where the MO is that people need to ask you to dance. This is me fearing, facing all those rejection fears in the face. So I hired up a private teacher so I could get really comfortable with the dancing, and then he's you gotta go out there to the socials. And I'm well, it doesn't fit my schedule, my sleeping schedule, my nah.
Oh, did you ask him out?
No. This is a person I know for a long time. And I also used to drink a lot when I dance.
Yeah.
It was the only way that I could get fully inhibited.
Yeah.
But I'm I cannot go to a social on Monday and go drink. That's just it. That is not a thing that I can do. I guess I could, but it just doesn't go with the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So I started to do it a little bit here and there, and I could feel my anxiety come up. But I'm like, I'm still gonna go. And like every time I went, without fail, I danced, I sweated, I moved, and I felt so much better.
Yeah.
So much so that the kids were like, Mom, can we go dancing with you? So they started coming and dancing, and like we've done a lot of that. So I know that I just need to like show up, you know, with some sort of courage, and like it will be fine, and like it will be better once I do it.
Yeah.
But it is so scary.
Yeah. Just so you know, I've been dealing with a lot of anxiety over the past 3 months, 5 months, and well, a lot is relative because I don't feel like that's been the case before on the performance side. But I was at the first time it really hit, I was at a poetry reading in Chapel Hill with Cortland Gilliam's going away party for his poet laureate-ness. And I didn't know, I told him I wanted to read, and I didn't know I'd be first. And he called me to stage, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, like decades, but just my chest tightened. I could barely get the words out. And it was so fucking terrifying. And I got it together and got better. I progressed better and better throughout the read, but it was bad. And I liked the work I was reading. I felt comfortable. I know that there was a lot of people in the room who were way bigger deals than me, as far as the poetry scene in the Triangle. And I think there was something just frightening about it. But I got so caught off guard. And the way I processed it on the way home was, that's the right room you need to be in.
Yeah.
Like, if you're feeling super confident all the time, my dad used to tell me when we would snow ski downhill, like, if you're not falling, you're not skiing hard enough. And so I think about that sometimes and just try to say, like, I don't know. Like, sometimes you trip on the sidewalk for no other reason than you trip. But the reality is over 99% of the time you're not tripping, and that's a miracle. And so when I think about, like, when I fuck up like that time, but it's so insidious, and it'll continue to creep in, and you fear it, and then it happens, and then it reinforces its own reality, its own sort of necessity in warning you how bad things could get, because then they get bad. But I've been dealing a lot with that, and so just so you know, so the listeners know, it's not as if I'm devoid of anxiety. Like, it happens to us all, but I think the key is, as you mentioned, is exposure, the exposure therapy to say, I'm scared of this, I'm gonna go do it, then I'm gonna meet back with myself and see how scary it actually was. Well, actually, that made me feel really good. Yeah. Therefore, next time when I feel scared, I shouldn't feel as scared because I know the outcome is going to be good. You know, like I think that's really healthy the way you did that.
Yeah. And I did. I think I learned a lot about how important it is for me to really take care of my body in that way. You know, like to feel like loose and like free. And I don't know if this is true for all dancing, but like Latin dancing, it's really intimate, you know? And I think that after my last breakup, I really needed some sort of like reconnection to like my desire and like my womanhood, because I am an aging woman. And like every time I have a breakup, it's like, oh, now I'm single again, I'm older again, and like, what does that mean, you know? So I've been dealing with a lot of fears around like feeling super irrelevant, and like that was like, we're good. Yeah. You know, we're good. Yeah. Like the body's like, and it's just like being in your body that reminds you that, okay, we are good. You know, like I can move, like. Yeah. So it was really helpful. And I think that for me, like creativity in general, it's also a way of like continue to feel relevant. Maybe not necessarily, I don't know, to myself, you know, like as a contributing human.
Yeah.
Even if it's just to my kids. Like, that will be a win.